Hello, Scorpio soul. If you found yourself here, it's not by accident. It's because something inside you, quiet, deep, and unrelenting, has been whispering the same message over and over again. It's time. Not just to think about letting go, but to actually do it. To make the move your heart has been preparing for. To walk away from something or someone that no longer gives you peace, even if it once felt like home. You felt the shift. You've stayed awake at night trying to justify the unease, wondering if you were just being too sensitive, too intense, too much. But that quiet discomfort in your chest, that sudden disinterest in conversations that used to feel meaningful, that moment you realized you were more exhausted than fulfilled, those are not passing moods, Scorpio. Those are signals. And your intuition, your strongest gift, is trying to speak to you through silence, through dreams, through the ache of what no longer fits. This isn't about blame, and it's not about proving who's right or wrong. It's about something more sacred than all of that, your energetic survival. The truth is, letting go isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a slow exhale after holding your breath for far too long. Sometimes, it's choosing peace over history. Sometimes, it's just finally saying, I can't carry this anymore, and you don't have to. This isn't a call to cut ties recklessly. It's an invitation to honor your boundaries before they collapse under the weight of what you keep ignoring. You know the difference between emotional storms and spiritual misalignment, and this, Scorpio, is the latter. The connection that once lit you up has become a flicker. The bond that once felt cosmic now drains more than it gives. This isn't just sadness, it's sacred truth. And sacred truth doesn't go away because we avoid it. It grows louder until we listen. So no, this isn't a video about diagnosing someone else. This is about pulling the thorn from your own heart cleanly, calmly, without bleeding all over your future. Because no matter how strong your loyalty is, no matter how deep your attachment goes, there comes a time when staying costs more than leaving. And when that moment arrives, the most powerful thing you can do is say yes to yourself. Let's talk about how, you see, Scorpio, your intuition is one of the most powerful forces you carry, but even the most gifted intuitives can get clouded when the heart is bleeding. And when you love with your entire being. That's why discernment is everything right now. Not every strong emotion is a signal to act, and not every silence means surrender. You need to ask yourself, with radical honesty, not just what you're feeling, but where it's coming from. Are you reacting from a place of old wounds, from a pattern of abandonment you've tried to outrun your whole life? Or is this the quiet nudge of wisdom, the deeper knowing that says, this chapter is done, and it's okay to put the book down? Sometimes, pain masquerades as clarity, and other times, fear dresses up like loyalty. That's the danger zone for Scorpio, where your emotional depth becomes a labyrinth, and you can't always tell whether you're walking toward healing or just walking in circles. That's why this part of the process isn't about action yet, it's about listening deeply. It's about sitting still with the discomfort long enough for the truth to rise above the noise. Before you speak, before you cut ties, before you ghost or explode or vanish into your classic silence, ask, is this my wound talking or my soul waking up? Because if it's your wound, you'll leave and carry the same grief into the next season. But if it's your soul, then even the hardest goodbye will bring you peace, not punishment. Scorpio, you're not being asked to abandon love, you're being asked to align with it, honestly, wholly, even if that means releasing someone who can't meet you there. Let your next step come not from the heat of anger, but from the calm of knowing. That's where your real power lives. And now, Scorpio, comes the part that asks for your deepest courage. Not the courage to fight, but the courage to release. Because loving deeply, for you, has never been the problem. You know how to hold on, how to sacrifice, how to merge souls so completely that their pain becomes your own. But this moment is not about how much you loved. It's about whether you're willing to surrender what you can no longer carry. It's about whether you trust the timing of the universe more than the comfort of the familiar. There is a sacred kind of surrender that doesn't come from weakness, but from wisdom. It sounds like this. I release this person. I release the outcome. I release the idea that I must fix, prove, or chase what is not mine to hold. Scorpio, when you say those words, even if only in the quiet of your own heart, you're not letting go because love failed. You're letting go because love deserves to be free. And so do you. You are not meant to bleed forever to keep something alive. You are not meant to shrink or betray your own intuition to preserve a bond that has outlived its growth. You are meant to evolve, to shed, to rise, like you always do. Like the serpent shedding skin, like the phoenix burning down only to rise again. This is not death. This is sacred transformation. And when you place what you love into the hands of the divine, you make space for the kind of healing that no human closure could ever bring. You make space to come home to yourself. So take the leap, not with fear, but with trust. The universe does not ask you to surrender. Without reason, it asks, because what's waiting for you on the other side of this release is far more aligned with the soul you've become. Once you've surrendered the attachment in your heart, Scorpio, the next step is learning how to speak the truth without sharpening it into a blade. Because if anyone knows the power of words, how they can slice clean or leave scars, it's you. And yet, this isn't a moment for silence, nor for emotional eruption. It's a moment for sacred clarity. You don't need to ghost, disappear, or detonate. You don't need to rehearse every wound or list every failure. You simply need to honor what your soul already knows. This connection no longer feeds your spirit the way it once did, and staying would mean betraying something deep and true inside of you. You can say it gently. You can say it without anger. You can say, I've been listening to something deeper in me, and I no longer feel aligned in this space. You don't have to prove your pain or convince them of your suffering. You only need to tell the truth from a place that doesn't want to punish, but simply wants to be free. Scorpio, you're not here to play the villain or the victim. You're here to be the voice of transformation, even when your hands are shaking. And yes, truth can sting, but when spoken with compassion, it also liberates. So speak not from the fire of resentment, but from the stillness of resolve. Say what must be said, but say it like someone who has already begun healing, not someone still waiting to be rescued. That's the difference between closure and karma. You don't need to destroy someone to let them go. You just need to stop pretending that staying is still love. Let your truth be a door, not a dagger. Let it open the way forward for both of you. Eventually, Scorpio, the inner knowing becomes too loud to ignore, and reflection must give way to motion. You can only sit with the truth for so long before it demands embodiment. There comes a moment when you realize that clarity without action is just another form of self-betrayal. And no matter how much compassion you've cultivated, no matter how tenderly you've tried to hold both the love and the loss, the time comes when you must choose. Remain in a space that stifles your growth, or honor what you now know, even if it costs you comfort, connection, or closeness. Sometimes you'll walk away with a conversation. Other times, you'll simply stop feeding a dynamic that no longer deserves your emotional investment. You'll stop explaining, stop justifying, stop hoping that someone else will see what you've already accepted. And in that quiet withdrawal, there is power not because you want to hurt them, but because you finally refuse to hurt yourself. Scorpio, you are not here to bleed endlessly in places where your presence is tolerated but never truly treasured. You are not here to resurrect dead things out of loyalty. You are here to live fully, honestly, and in alignment with what your soul has evolved into. The first few steps may feel like exile. There might be silence, confusion, or even guilt, but that doesn't mean you've chosen wrong. It means you're detoxing from a version of yourself that was too used to settling. And yes, Scorpio, you are the sign of transformation, but transformation requires endings. It requires a severing of what no longer resonates. You might walk through the fire alone, but you will walk out clearer, stronger, and more whole than you've been in years. So whether it's a clean break or a quiet fading, take the step. Let the truth move through your body. Let your intuition become motion. Because once you do, you'll remember who you are, not the version of you that clung out of fear, but the one who was always meant to rise. You don't crumble in loss, Scorpio. You evolve, you shed, and then you return not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to be. And after the step is taken, Scorpio, comes the sacred task of preservation, not of the relationship, but of yourself. Because even when you've walked away with clarity, the echoes of attachment can still find their way back into your energy field. That's where boundaries become more than rules. They become medicine. You see, for someone like you, whose emotional bonds run so deep they're almost psychic, cutting ties isn't just about walking out the door. It's about learning to guard the spaces that once held too much of someone else. It's about keeping your energy your own, especially in the quiet moments when nostalgia pretends to be love and loneliness tries to convince you to look back. Boundaries are not punishment. They are not evidence that you're cold or unfeeling or bitter. They are the scaffolding that allows healing to take shape. You might need to block their number not out of spite, but because your nervous system deserves peace. You might need to remove the photos, clear the playlists, delete the saved conversations that you've reread too many times, because every one of those fragments is a hook that keeps you tethered to something you've already outgrown. And you know this, Scorpio. You are vulnerable to going back, not because you're weak, but because your heart remembers the intensity. And sometimes intensity masquerades as connection. But connection that costs you your peace is not love, it's a lesson. So when the urge comes to reach out, just to check, to respond to the casual message, to scroll through their feed to see if they miss you, pause, breathe, remember why you left. And most of all, remember who you're becoming. You don't need closure that reopens wounds. You don't need conversation that disrupts your clarity. What you need now is to choose yourself again and again, even when your heart gets soft. That is not selfishness, Scorpio. That is spiritual maturity. That is self-respect. And for someone who has spent years offering your loyalty to others, it's time to extend that same loyalty inward. The boundary isn't a wall, it's a door with a lock. You get to decide who enters. And right now, no one gets access to the places you're still healing. Let that be your new sacred vow. Not because you hate them, but because, finally, you love you. And once the boundaries are in place, Scorpio, there is one more layer you must face: the invisible threads. The ones that linger not in your phone or inbox, but in your memory. You know this better than anyone. You don't just remember people, you feel them. Their laughter, the way their energy moved when they entered a room, the things they said when you were both trying to hold something broken together. And because your soul attaches so fully, so fiercely, the remnants of connection don't just sit on shelves or hard drives, they live in your body, your music, your silence. This is the part where grief gets tricky, because it doesn't always look like pain. Sometimes it looks like sentimentality. Sometimes it looks like a favorite song that plays out of nowhere and leaves you wide open on a random Tuesday morning. But healing requires intention. And Scorpio, now is the time to become ruthless, not with your heart, but with your environment. It's time to clear space. Time to delete the old messages, not because they don't mean anything, but because they mean too much. Time to let go of the saved voicemails, the playlists that once made you feel close, the objects you've kept, not out of utility, but out of longing. You're not betraying the love by releasing these things. You're honoring the truth that love, when it's done, must be buried with care, not kept on display. And you're not erasing the past. You're making space for your future. Because something new, someone new can't find their way in, while the room is still filled with echoes. It takes strength to open drawers you've been avoiding. It takes spiritual discipline to unhook yourself from the sentimental webs that keep you tethered to what could have been. But this is your moment to practice sacred detachment, to bless what was and let it go. Because what you're really removing isn't just physical, it's energetic, it's psychic. And when you do, you'll notice something subtle and profound. The air around you feels lighter, the memories visit less, and your heart, it begins to beat just for you again. This is how the light returns, Scorpio. Not in a dramatic flood, but in the quiet space you finally made for it. And then, Scorpio, comes the echo, the part no one warns you about. You've done the work, you've cut the ties, you've cleared the space, but now you're left with the silence, the nights that feel a little too quiet, the mornings when you reach for your phone instinctively, only to remember there's no one to text. This isn't pain in the way you're used to. It's not the sharp sting of betrayal or the flood of heartbreak. It's the ache of absence. And for someone who feels as deeply as you do, absence can be louder than chaos. You'll question yourself. You'll wonder if you moved too fast, if you were too harsh, too final. You might replay conversations, scan old messages for signs you missed. Ask yourself if maybe, just maybe, that connection was meant to last longer. But Scorpio, don't let grief rewrite your clarity. You didn't let go out of cruelty. You let go to stop bleeding. You let go because staying meant losing yourself in slow, invisible ways. And the loneliness you feel now isn't a sign you were wrong. It's a natural part of cleansing. It's what happens when your soul is detoxing from over-identifying with someone else's presence. This is when you have to remember, the void doesn't last. The universe doesn't leave you empty-handed. After death, there's rebirth. After letting go, there's renewal. But first, you must resist the urge to fill the silence too quickly. Don't rush back into old dynamics just because they're familiar. Don't confuse longing with alignment. And most importantly, don't try to carry this alone, because that leads you to your next truth. You were never meant to walk through transformation in isolation. And while you may be someone who keeps your pain hidden behind strength, now is the time to reach out. Find the healer, the friend, the mentor, the one who sees through your silence and stays anyway, the one who can remind you who you are when your reflection is foggy with doubt. Let them speak truth when your inner voice is tired. Let them hold the light steady when yours is flickering. Community isn't weakness, Scorpio, it's protection. It's sacred scaffolding for the rebuilding of your spirit. And when the pain softens, when the tears stop arriving so uninvited, you'll begin to turn your gaze forward. Not because you've forgotten, but because you've outgrown. The horizon won't look the same, but that's because you are no longer the same. You've burned down an identity that was shaped by sacrifice, and now you get to rise cleaner, clearer, more sovereign than ever. You didn't lose a part of yourself in this process. You reclaimed it. And if the one you're releasing happens to be your child, the path shifts, but the principle remains. If they're young, this is about boundaries, not abandonment. You can teach, guide, protect with firmness and with love. If they're grown, you must loosen the grip, even if your heart tightens. You cannot shape another's soul journey, even if you gave them life. But you can stand at the threshold with open arms and quiet prayers, ready to welcome them when they return not to your control, but to your love. Scorpio, you are not here to love halfway. You never have been, but now you are learning something greater, how to love fully without losing yourself. This isn't the end. It's the sacred beginning of everything you've been becoming. And if the soul you're being called to release is your child, then Scorpio, the weight is even greater and the surrender even more sacred. Because nothing in this world pierces deeper than the love you carry for someone you brought into existence. But even here, the principles of healing and divine order still apply. If your child is still young, this is not about walking away. It is about teaching them the structure their soul needs to grow. It is about setting boundaries that are anchored in love, not fear. It is about protecting without controlling, disciplining without punishing, loving fiercely without enabling the behaviors that fracture connection. You are their guide, not their jailer. And sometimes the most profound act of love is saying no, even when your heart aches to say yes. But if your child is grown walking their own path, making choices that break your heart or leave you helpless, then your role becomes one of trust, not control. You cannot live their life for them. You cannot rewrite their journey no matter how much you want to spare them pain. What you can do is remain open, prayerful, and available. What you can offer is a love that does not chase, but always waits. A presence that does not intrude, but never closes the door. Like the father of the prodigal son, you can stand at the edge of your own transformation, holding the space for theirs not by force, but by faith. And when all is said and done, when you've laid down the attachment, spoken the truth, set the boundaries, released the remnants, and sat with the silence, what's left may still be pain. And that, Scorpio, is not a sign of failure. That is the echo of your love. If you're hurting, it means you cared, and caring is never wrong. But if the pain has replaced your peace, if your soul is no longer expanding, if your energy is constantly negotiating between who you are and what they need you to be, then letting go is not abandonment. Letting go is evolution. Letting go is the moment the snake sheds its skin, not because the old one was ugly, but because it became too tight to hold the life that still wanted to grow. So release. Not because you stopped loving. Release because you finally started loving yourself. This isn't a failure. This is your rite of passage. And you, Scorpio, have never feared rebirth. You were born for it. You are it. Let this be your sacred return to wholeness. Let this be the beginning of the version of you that no longer begs for space but takes it, not in bitterness, not in revenge, but in full, radiant, unapologetic truth. The old skin is gone. The new one is waiting. And so is the life you've been too loyal to begin.